Hello, welcome to Islamic Civilization, this time session 21 that deals with Andalusia, which is southern Spain, or the Muslim rule in Spain from 711 to 1492. Make sure this Andalusia, sometimes it's written Andalus without the IA, and sometimes it's written Andalusia, just like as it is here in this slide. So it doesn't matter, it's the same thing, Andalusia. In terms of objectives for this session, we would talk about the Umayyad conquest and then their escape to Spain, their ambitious and failed attempt of taking France, Christian reconquista after more than 500 years Muslim rule in Spain. That is how the Christians reconquered Spain and took it from Muslims. And then in Spain, Muslims, they created a unique cultural achievement of Andalusia. This presentation, it has a lot of material, but I'm going to, run through and rush through some of the slides because otherwise we won't be able to finish it. There would be enough material in the syllabus and the resources for you to read the material on your own, and so let's get to the presentation and let's see what we have. The objectives, Umayyad's conquest again and their escape to Spain, their ambitious and failed attempt of taking France, Christian reconquista, that is taking Spain from Muslim rule of 500 years, and Muslims created a unique culture in Andalus, southern Spain, where you had interfaith tolerance, art, and philosophy. Now, let's see Europe, and that is a group of people, Europeans, called the Visigoths. That is the Western Goths, Western Germanic people, who starting from the Caspian Sea, coming down to Italy, going up further north, and then coming all the way to southern Spain. And one of their groups, the Vandals, getting into even northern Africa, the western part of North Africa, Vandals. And that is that particular group, Vandals, gave name to Spain in Arabic called Andalus. So the Arabic word Andalus or Andalusia, which is also used in English now, that word is derived from the tribal name of the European Gothic people called Vandals. And these Vandals, as I told you in one of the previous sessions, they were known in the region, especially in Europe, for death and destruction that they wreaked upon the people, rape, and the horrible things that they did to people. And so finally they got into North Africa, and that's where the Muslim population in North Africa destroyed them and got Europe and North Africa rid of this particular group of people. But the name stuck with Spain. That's where Vandals had settled and came from to North Africa, and so that's why from Vandal we get the word Andalus. By the way, in English we get also vandalism. That term also we get from the tribal name of this particular group, Vandals. Okay, let's see. So the Visigothic kingdoms, and you see them a lot in Spain, in parts of Germany, also across the Alps. And so these kingdoms, around 500 AD, way before the rise of Islam, in fact, fighting among themselves. Some were Christians, some followed some other religions. And so Europe was already in big trouble because of these invasions from the north and east, the Huns invasion before that. So think of Europe a very bad place at that time, very troubled place. Now the Umayyad Empire, which stretched, as I said, from North Africa in the west all the way to modern day Afghanistan in the east, that Umayyad Empire in fact also came to an end when the Abbasid, the next group of people that we talked about, they took over all this from the Umayyads. They put an end to the Umayyad rule in Arabia, even in North Africa. However, in Spain and certain part of North Africa, the Umayyads stayed strong because they were far away from the Abbasid rule, which was in Iraq. The capital was in Iraq. So the Umayyads still, and here in this map you see the darker green color on the left, which is western part of North Africa and southern part of Spain, that was still in the hands of the Umayyad, even if they lost all the territories, including Mecca and Medina, and up to Afghanistan, they lost it to the Abbasids, and we covered that in the previous session. All right, so the Umayyad conquest of Spain in 711 AD. An Umayyad general, military officer by the name Tariq ibn Ziyad, and we talked about him also previously, he was called to support a Christian king in Spain against another Christian Visigothic king, Roderick. So think about it, two Christian powers fighting among themselves in Spain, and one Christian king asked the Muslim to help him against the other Christian king, that would be Roderick. So the Umayyad, they were stationed, and especially Tariq ibn Ziyad, he was stationed in Morocco against the Vandals. He was already there, and so he crossed the Gibraltar Strait to Spain, and that is how Gibraltar, it was named at that time Jablut Tariq, the mountain of Tariq, and it is that Jablut Tariq Arabic, which is anglicized into as Gibraltar. So Gibraltar is the anglicized form of Jablut Tariq, which means the mountain of Tariq, because Tariq crossed the strait from Morocco into Spain, going after King Roderick and other Visigothic rulers. Conquest of Spain. Tariq ibn Ziyad, he attacked the invading Visigoths. Right there you see him. Jablut Tariq, right there, the rock, as some people refer to it, the rock, Tariq's mountain, Jablut Tariq, Gibraltar. And so in the Battle of Guadalete in 711 AD, Tariq ibn Ziyad defeated the Visigothic king Roderick. Tariq ibn Ziyad, however, he was called to Damascus because Damascus having its own problems. So he had to leave Spain, went to Damascus, the capital of Syria. But he left his commander, Abdul Aziz ibn Musa. He left behind to take control of the conquered place. And so Abdul Aziz ibn Musa, he ruled Andalus, or Andalusia, southern Spain, from Seville, which was his capital at that time. And he married Eglona, or Igilona, the widow of King Roderick. Now some people say she was not the widow of king, she was the daughter of King Roderick. Whatever the case may be, there are sources that refer to her as the widow of King Roderick, and some refer to her as the daughter of King Roderick. So Igilona or Igilona. So Ibn Musa, he married Igilona. She encouraged Abdul Aziz, the king of Seville, so to speak, to adopt Visigothic ways of receiving an audience, bowing to him. What it meant was, she encouraged her husband, the Muslim king, to act like a king in the Visigothic or European way, which was very different from the Muslim way. In Islam, no really true Muslim would bow his head to another human being. That refers to sujood, that is bowing to Allah. And so the head goes and bows down only to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in prayer. But here she encouraged him that this is how, in Europe, people, when they come to their king, they bow their heads, they prostrate. That was not only just in Europe, but also in India and in Persia and everywhere. But the Muslim would not follow that tradition of bowing to another person, no matter how high that person was, because bowing, the sujood, the prostration was only to God in prayer. She encouraged him, and he said, okay, while in Rome, do as the Roman do. So he started doing the same thing, and he asked everyone, Muslim and non-Muslim, to bow to him. And that is what some people did not like. He also most probably showed some other signs of un-Islamic practices. And so the rumor spread that he had converted to Christianity, or he was no longer a Muslim. And so that, he would pay, for that with his life. And let's see what happened to him. So he became very unpopular with the people. And so he was, in fact, assassinated. Caliph Suleiman, who was in Damascus, when he came to know that Ibn Musa, Abdulaziz ibn Musa, the governor of Spain in Seville, he was asking people to bow to him. Most probably he also took, money from people, and so he got him assassinated. Now, this would not be the first thing, and the last thing that any Muslim ruler would do, and some of them, they did that a lot. Among the Christians, the same thing. Among the Muslims, the same thing. And do not take this session as a fight between Christianity and Islam. It was not a fight between Christianity and Islam, although it was a fight between Christians and Muslims, who in fact utilized the other group as we would see it. So there were Christian soldiers in the Muslim ruler's army and vice versa. And so it was very, mixed up and messy situation. It was never a fight between Islam and Christianity. It was a fight between two groups of people who happened to be Muslim and Christian, and Muslim fought against Muslims, and Christian fought against Christians and against the other group of people. Okay, let's see. The Battle of Tours, or Poitiers, in 732 AD, very important battle in the history of Spain, and for that reason entire Europe. Abdurrahman al-Ghafiqi, a Muslim commander, an Umayyad, he, without having a good knowledge of France, the geographical knowledge of France, what he did, he took his Muslim army from Spain across the Pyrenees mountains, deep inside France, up to Paris. Unbelievable. Never before anybody had done that. Maybe 200 years before the birth of Jesus, Hannibal did something like that, to the Romans. But this was another, so to speak, attempt of long distance march. And so he paid for that. He in fact united the divided Christians against himself. When he went to as far deep in France as Paris, that united other Christians, against himself, and so he paid for that. In the Battle of Tours, as you see, Seville, down in Spain, in southern Spain. So he marched from southern Spain all the way into further northern France, Tours, which is just outside, a few hundred miles south of Paris. And so there he had a battle with the king of France at that time, who had the united army of Christians. And let's see, crossing the Pyrenees, right there, this is a NASA picture of the Pyrenees, just to give you, how difficult it must have been for him, al-Ghafiqi, to go from southern Spain all the way to central France and crossing all these. And this happened in the second year. And so that was not something, good for him. So the Saracen, the Muslim army of Abdul Rahman al-Ghafiqi, reached the city of Paris, and there you see them. The Battle of Poitiers, or Tours, is the same place, two names, 732 AD, and in that battle, the Muslim forces were defeated. So Charles Martel, the king of the Franks, very important person in the history of France, and for that reason, the history of Europe. Charles Martel, king of France, he decisively defeated the Muslim army who had come all the way from southern Spain to northern France. He defeated Commander Commander Al-Ghafiqi, he died in the battlefield. So Charles Martel restricted Muslim to southern Spain. After this defeat in 732 AD, Muslim would never dare to go, ever to go further in France. So Muslim became further divided. That was another thing also for Muslim that came as a result of the Battle of Poitiers. And they fought among themselves till the end of the Muslim presence in Spain, and that end came in 1492. Okay, Muslim rule in Andalus or Andalusia, Spain, this would be around 1000 AD, and there you see, Spain in the green, southern Spain. Further north, the Kingdom of Leon and Castile, and further, in Pyrenees and up north, these were Christian lands. So the green area is that of the Muslims, but it was not a united Muslim caliphate, so to speak. Although Umayyad claimed it, the ruler were Umayyad, but it was divided among several governors. And some of these governors, local rulers, they had good connections with the Christians. And so anytime two Muslim rulers would be fighting, definitely one of them would have the support of a Christian ruler, and vice versa in the north among the Christians. When they were fighting against each other, then definitely they would have the support of one or another Muslim ruler. And so that's why the history of southern Spain, especially in Andalusia, is very complicated till the end 1492, and we will see that at the end of this presentation. Okay, let's see further. Muslim rule in Spain, mostly confined to southern Spain, as I said, fragmented and mutually fighting, Muslims among themselves fighting. Both Muslim and Christian rulers used religion for personal dynastic power. Very common thing. Christian had more chances to join hands against Muslims but failed to act together. That tells you how much the Christians were divided among themselves, and they preferred Muslim rulers. Even the people, the common people, especially, it's an amazing thing, especially the peasants, the common people on the ground, they preferred Muslim rulers. These were Christian peasants. They preferred Muslim rulers because the Muslim rulers would not tax them as much as the Christians did. Although still, these Christian people, they would have to pay jizya, the head tax, to the Muslim rulers, and also tax on their crops and lands, but at least the lands remain in the possession of the Christian people. And so that was one of the reasons that you see again and again in Spain, on part of the Christian people, especially the peasants, the poor people, the common people, a preference for a Muslim ruler. And that is why there would be, sort of a talk or cliche, better to be under a Turk in Europe, better to be under a Turk than under a Christian prince, because the Christian prince, brutalized the Christian population, so they preferred the Muslim rulers, and that started in Spain, would go further east, even to Greece and Eastern Europe, and the Turks would play the same sort of a strategy, giving land and better chances, more opportunities and better chances to the people to prosper, and easy for the king to tax them more. So good revenues, good taxation, a lot of production. Let's see further. So Muslim rule in Spain, Muslim and Christian rulers recruited commanders, soldiers of fortune from the other religious group. So Muslim rulers would recruit Christian soldiers, and Christian soldier would recruit Muslim soldiers. Christian rulers would recruit Muslim soldiers. They often made alliances against their co-religionists, and who were their enemies for political and economic reasons. As I said, Muslim would, invite Christians against their Muslim enemies and vice versa. So Christians fights the common thing. And that those fights brought Muslim army to the Iberian Peninsula in 711 AD in the first instance. So basically Muslim came to Spain by helping one Christian king against another Christian king, and that other Christian king was Roderick, a Visigothic king. Here the term Iberia is Iberian Peninsula is used. Iberian Peninsula means Spain plus Portugal. The two countries together would give you the terminology of Iberian Peninsula. Okay. The Abbasid Revolution in 750, we talked about that in the previous session, when Abu al-Abbas al-Safa headed an anti-Umayyad Khurasani rebels, defeated the last Umayyad ruler Marwan II, and Marwan's youngest son Abdul Rahman I and his family, they fled to Spain, which was in the hands of his family, Umayyad rulers. And so that Spain had been conquered by the Umayyad general, especially Tariq ibn Ziyad in 711 AD. So still the Umayyads were there in Spain, and so Marwan II, the last ruler of the Umayyad, the son was Abdul Rahman I, he fled to Spain, and there he would create his own dynasty and his own rule. Abdul Rahman declared himself the Amir and the ruler of Andalus, as again Andalus means southern Spain. And so in this case, this Andalus would expand north and sometimes would contract back to south. So there would be expansion and contraction of the Muslim rule, and there are maps, at what point 700, 1200, 1300, and then eventually 1400, where the Muslim rule was. So there is a lot of expansion and contraction in the Muslim rule in Spain. So let's see. Now the end of the Umayyad Caliphate in Syria. But at the same time, the Umayyad Caliphate rose in Spain from 711 to 1492, and that is a long time of rule for the Umayyad caliphs or emirs in Spain. Speaking of caliph and emir, most of them, they call themselves emir, rulers, rather than caliphs. Okay? So the end of the Umayyad Caliphate in Syria, but the rise of the same Umayyad emirate, emirs in Spain. Umayyad rule in Spain. Abdul Rahman I, as I said, ruled Spain from 756 to 788 AD. He laid the foundation of the Umayyad rule in Spain, fought against fellow Muslim rulers, nothing new about that. And these Muslim rulers who fought against Abdul Rahman, they had made alliance with Charlemagne, Charles the Great, one of the greatest kings of the Franks in France at that time. Okay? And so this the fight between Abdul Rahman and Charlemagne gave birth to what is called the Song of Roland, about the heroes and traitors in the fight between the Christians and Muslims. So cross-religious alliances and constant warfare, that was quite common in Spain and in Europe. Okay? The Song of Roland, Abdul Rahman first ruled Spain. There was another ruler, Hussein, up north in Zaragoza in Barcelona. He allied himself with the Frankish leader Charlemagne against his enemy, Muslim enemy, Abdul Rahman. But Hussein betrayed Charlemagne, and that was quite common also. When Charlemagne successfully defeated Abdul Rahman, he went against them. Then the Basque rebels, who were non-Muslims, they attacked Charlemagne. In fact, in this case, Charlemagne had taken Hussein as hostage, but the Basque rebels attacked Charlemagne's army and rescued Hussein. Amazing. Roland, who was the nephew of Charlemagne, he was killed in this battle on Roncesvalles in 778 AD. And that's how the whole Song of Roland is about. And so here Roland was killed by the Basque rebels, not by Muslims though, as some people mistakenly think, in the Battle of Roncesvalles in 778 AD. And so here in this case, this battle between the Christian ruler, the Frankish, Charlemagne, Charles the Great, and the Abdurrahman I, the Umayyad ruler. That has been a lot of romanticized, and romanticism very common among Muslims and Christians. And you would see later, historians also contributed to this romance. And romance, not only just in terms of the mindset, but also literally. You would see a Muslim prince falling in love with a Christian lady, and vice versa. And so there would be, Muslims, rulers who would love to marry Christian women from the royalty. Some would succeed and some would fail. And so that romance also you would see a lot, while there would be an active hostility going on between the Christian and the Muslim royal houses in Spain, even up north in France. Okay, let's see further. Spanish Muslim Andalusian society from 711 to 1492, long period. And so this Andalusian culture and society, especially in the time of Abdurrahman III, the Emir or the Caliph of Cordova, especially in the south, he ruled from 912 to 961 AD, the longest rule. I should say, when it comes to the shortest rule and the longest rule, both among Christians and among Muslims, there is not really something like a statistically proven scientific thing, but it did happen so that the one ruler, whether Muslim or Christian, who ruled the longest for 10 years, for 20 years, 30 years, in some cases even for 50 years. The reason for that was that this Christian or Muslim ruler took care of their people. So as long as the people were happy, the person would rule, would sit on the throne like almost forever. And the moment the people turned against the ruler, he could still brutalize them, but he could not brutalize them all the time. And so these people would simply, and it happened a lot of time, especially in Europe, they would not show up in the army, they would not support him against the invading army of another ruler, and that is how he would lose his rule. So there were certain rulers, both among Christians and Muslims, who had learned the lesson to treat their people well, and Abdurrahman III was one of them. And there was some good reason for him too to do that. Let's see. Abdurrahman III, the Emir or the Caliph of Cordova, ruled for a long time. His mother was Christian. She is referred to as Muza or Muzaina, as in Arabic. He even had a Christian paternal grandmother. And that is why his relationship with the Christian population, which was the majority in Cordova, in other places in Spain, was very good. And so that's why people were very happy with him. Another Uneka for Tunis, the Princess of Navarre Kingdom. She also, was in his family previously, his grandma. And so he followed a very enlightened religious policy, and that kept him for quite some time on his throne, and he died, his own death. Let's see. Abdurrahman III here, as you see in this image, which was made by a European, image maker. And so in this court, definitely you see him on the throne. He's a Muslim. But in the audience, there are a lot of Jews, Christians, and Muslims, and on his right, you see the singing, and the music playing ladies on the right. So this at that time suggested that he was very enlightened type of a person who would allow music in his court, maybe drinking, who knows, especially drinking is not forbidden for Jews and Christians through the Jewish Sharia or the Jewish law, religious law. Of course, it's forbidden for Muslims, but that does not mean a Muslim would not sip, or drink a glass or two. And so this type of enlightenment, so to speak, or broad-mindedness to have Christians and Jews in his court was quite common on part of, if not all, Muslim rulers, definitely a lot of Muslim rulers, and they benefited from the presence of the Christian in the court and from the presence of the Jewish people, although Jews were minority in Spain, but still a very significant minority. They were highly qualified people, doctors, engineers. They were ambassadors in Muslim Spain, left and right. They were, used as ambassadors. They had good offices. They had, other languages, especially Greek. And so that is one reason that the Christians or the Catholics in Spain did not trust the Jews, and the Jews would pay very heavily for that type of being suspected of having a soft corner, or maybe even the spies for Muslim. That is what the Christian would suspect them and brutalize them. So let's see further. Andalusian culture and society. Both Muslim and Christian rulers or elites owned slaves who were basically prisoners of wars, and they were free members of the other community, but they were not really completely free. Even if they were free people, Christians and Muslim living under the Christian or Muslim ruler, they were not completely free, even though they were free. Okay, and Christian owners, they sold Muslim slaves. It happens quite common in the history of Spain. Why Christian owners would sell Muslim slaves for good reasons. Number one, the Christian owners feared the Muslim slaves, that Muslim slave might kill them or do something against them, and also if they could sell the Muslim slave, they would sell it for very good profit. So another Muslim would buy a fellow Muslim and set him free. So it was a good thing for the Christian slave owner just to sell him, because he could not trust him, and that was good for him to sell him, and good for the slave, he would gain his freedom. Okay. Both Umayyad and Abbasid rulers, Arab rulers and elites, they had white European slaves. It might be coming to you as a strange thing, because in the American history, when we say slave, that means a black person. And of course, black people, they were brought here in United States or before that, as workers and slaves. So for American, slavery means slavery of the black people at the hands of the white people. So the slave is black and the owner, the master, is white. In this case, in case of the Arab owners of the slaves, Arab would own European white slaves. So, and this is nothing new, because Europeans enslaved Europeans, like the Greeks, they enslaved fellow Greeks. Romans, they enslaved, fellow Italians and Greeks. So that was nothing new. But here, the new thing was that Arabs who became rulers in one or another part of Europe, they would own white European slaves. And so let's see where they owned whom. So Muslim Arab rulers and elites, whether they were Umayyad or Abbasid, they owned white European slaves like the Greeks in Syria and Egypt, Spanish slaves and Portuguese slaves in Iberia, owned by Muslims, East European slaves owned in Ottoman Turkey. Now, to get out of slavery, the easiest thing was to convert or marry. So conversion for the male as well as the female, and marriages for the female slave. The moment a Muslim owner married a white European Christian woman, she would convert and he would marry her. So conversions would set the man free, marriage would set the woman free, from slavery. And all of that happened. Most young Muslim soldiers who came from Arabia, different parts of the Middle East, especially North Africa, they married Spanish and Portuguese women. And that is why the society, for 400-500 years that the Muslims were rulers in Spain, intermarriages, interfaith marriages were quite common. So their children also followed the same tradition of interfaith marriages for almost 300 years. That made a unique culture and society in Spain. And so that's why the Andalusian society was a unique society, because the place was a unique place. Interracial, interreligious interaction, very common and very good. Okay, let's see further. And that those intermarriages created a new group of people that were again and again referred to as Mozarabic or Mozareba. So these Mozareba were Arabized Christians in Spain, Iberian Christian, that would be Spanish Christian, and Portuguese Christians who had adopted mixed Spanish Arabic language, because Arabic, very strong language, it mixed up with the Spanish and created a new language. And so these people, Christians, Portuguese and Spanish Christian, they adopted Arabic language and they adopted Muslim dress. Okay, and so they entered services of Muslim rulers and their courts in the army, in the bureaucracy, in diplomacy, in medicine, in different aspect of human life. They were needed, and they did very well. They formed their own group or community, the Mozareba or the Mozarabic people, for protection against both Christian and Muslim hostilities. Okay, and they were very much conscious of their community concern. Now here, this Mozareba, I need to explain a little bit. Keep in mind, these are still Christians, and some of them Jews. But they, because of their Arabic speech that they adopted, and because of the Arabic dress that they would wear, they would look Muslims. And they felt very comfortable among Muslim, among Muslim people, especially in the company of Muslim scholars. And these are Mozaraba people, highly educated Jewish and Christian people who had just adopted the Arabic language and Arabic dressed, Muslim dress. However, their fellow Christian did not like them because they look Arabs. And the Muslim did not like them because they knew that these guys, they speak Arabic and dress like Muslim, but they were not Muslim. So deceiving people, and it was very easy for them to intermarry with the Muslim and with the Jews, and so it was a unique type of a group of people. This reminds me also right now as we speak in the 21st century in United States, when Arab they come as immigrants, down the road in the first or the second generation, so to speak, their children, they learn English language, of course. They speak like the American, they're all American, boys and girls, but Muslims, of course. They may not be even that much observant, and even if they are observant, they speak the language American accent. They dress like the Americans. So when you look at them, they look all American boys and girls. But deep inside they are Muslims. Sometimes they show their Islam to their fellow, their friends in the schools and colleges. And that is exactly what happened, 1,000 years ago in Muslim Spain, when non-Muslim would adopt Arabic language and Arab or Muslim dress, and they would, flow around or glide around, cruise around in any community very easily. However, the church did not like them. And one reason was, just like some Arabs today living in the United States complain that their children, they don't speak Arabic, exactly the same way the Catholic Church would complain against these Mozaraba Christian that they do not speak Latin. Definitely they wrote in Arabic because that was the language, prominent language of the whole Middle East and Spain. And if they wanted to publish their ideas, their views, they must write it in Arabic. And the moment they wrote in Arabic, their book would be coming to North Africa, and then to Egypt, and then to Baghdad and Syria, and even up to Iran. and that is how they would be known, in the known world at that time. So Mozarabe people, I really encourage you to read something about them online or in the resources section in your class Laulima on site. Okay, let's see. So the Andalusian culture, the Mozarabic Christians and Jews did not necessarily, as I said, they did not necessarily convert to Islam. They stayed in their own religions, but felt very comfortable living among Muslims. Strange conversion and communication. Look at this thing. Now, one Christian, Bodo Elazar, he converted to Judaism. And in another case, Pablo Alvaro, he was a Jew but converted to Christianity. And they had good communication with each other. And then Elazar would tell Alvaro, you go back to your religion. And the other guy would say, no, you should go back to your religion. And so they would talk to one another, to deconvert the other to his religion. And so they cross, religions, a Jew converting to Christianity and a Christian converting to Judaism. So that's how their communication, maybe you can read also that in the resources section or online between the two of them. And that was also the case of Mozarabe group of people. They could do that. If a Christian converted to Islam or Judaism, he better get out of the Christian land and move further south to the Muslim part of Spain and live there. And that's a lot of people just did that. And these two also did that. They moved to southern Spain, so they were in Muslim Spain and protected from their communities. Staying with the society and culture of Andalusia, conversion took place, of course. Christians converted to Islam. Muslims converted also to Christianity. Okay? Jews converted to Islam and Christianity. And these conversions, a lot of them forced, some of them faked, some induced, with good economy and good political positions, and some reverted back to their old religion. The end of Andalus or Andalusia is coming up. So the marriage of Ferdinand, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, one from Castile, the other from Leon, that marriage in fact united France. The marriage of King Ferdinand and that of Queen Isabella united France, and the two forces, when they became united, they used that Christian unity against Muslims in Spain and would drive both Muslims as well as Jews out of Spain through different strategies. 1492. This is the other 1492 to you in the American history, 1492 when Columbus, sailed the ocean blue. And so that's the other, this is another 1492, very disturbing, the end of the Andalusian period in Spain. Amir Muhammad the 12th on January 2nd, 1492, he surrendered his emirate of Cordova to Queen Isabella of Castile and her husband King Ferdinand II of Aragon. And so they united entire Spain, the king and queen, and that is the Muslim rule ended in Spain in 1492. So 1492 is also the capitulation of Cordova. Muhammad the 12th surrendered to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, right there as you see in the ceremony between the two of them. There is a story about that surrender, and that is the Muslim king, the Christians, they insisted that he should come down, kiss the hands of the Christian King Ferdinand and give his sword to the king, present his sword to the king. The mother of the Muslim king believed that that was too much humiliating, too much of humiliation, and she had Christian friends, and they convinced the king that do not bring about this type of humiliation upon the Muslim king. So both would be sitting on their horses, and the exchange would be verbal. However, there was a signed document on part of King Ferdinand that he would not brutalize the Muslims. He would not take his, their land or their, whatever they possessed. However, he reneged on those ones. Some people say, no, he honored the Muslim part, but he did not honor the Jewish part. And so that's how the Jewish people suffered at the hands of King Ferdinand and Isabella, because the Muslim rulers could not protect them. And so this also leads me to another, strange thing in Spain. Jews were very much protected by Muslims. And as long as Muslim had power in Spain, no Christian could dare to molest a Jew. Once they lost power, Muslim rulers lost power in Spain, they could not protect Jews. Jews were very much brutalized by the Christians and forced them to get out of Spain into Muslim North Africa, as well as to Muslim Ottoman Turkey, further east in Turkey and in Egypt and in Syria and Iraq. And that's where you would have a heavy concentration of the Jewish people in the heavily populated Muslim lands. And so that's why even today, by the way, in Israel, there are two types of Jewish groups. One, the Spanish Jew, and the other is the other European Jew. And so the Ashkenazis and the Sephardim, the Spanish Jews are till this day are referred to as the Sephardim, and the other European Jews are referred to as the Ashkenazi. The Sephardim Jews, they look more like Arabs, or the Palestinians inside Palestine and Israel. And so that is why you have a heavy presence of the Sephardic or the Spanish Jews in the state of Israel till this day, because they were protected by Muslims throughout the Muslim countries and history. Okay, let's see further. So Muhammad, he bid his farewell to Cordova, and there you see him. And on the right is his famous sword, which he did not, use. And so that sword is now somewhere in a Spanish museum. And so that was the end, and he is the last ruler of the Muslim Spain, and he surrendered his, Cordova to King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Okay. 1492 also, very important, as I said, Columbus sailed the ocean blue, and that is when Muslim rule lost, Spain. That is where King Ferdinand and Isabella could afford to send Columbus on the world discoveries, in this case the discovery of South Central America, even though Columbus believed till his death that he had discovered India, although he was still cruising in Bahamas and he believed that this was India, and that's why he started calling the local people in Central America as Indies, because he really believed that he was in India. And ever since, we call the Native American as Indians, thanks to Columbus, lack of knowledge at that time, although he was a great geographer, a great discoverer, no question about it. But he did not know the geography well. He believed that he was in India when he was, in Central America. Okay, let's see. So from that onward, you would see a lot of other, problems. Both the king and queen, they launched the Spanish Inquisition in 1480, issued by as they are referred to as the Catholic monarchs, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain. They directed this Inquisition against both Muslims and Jews. In 1480s, the Muslims suffered. They forced them to convert to Christianity, and of course it happened, forced conversion. They also forced them, into exile. They tortured them and even burned the Jews at the stake. All that happened. Some Catholics also suffered in the Inquisition, who the king and the queen did not like them, or the church did not like them. Catholics, they also suffered at the hands of the Inquisition. The Alhamra decree in 1492, that was issued by the Catholic monarchs, King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, and it was for the Jews. The Alhamra decree was meant for the Jews, that all Jews were to convert to Christianity, and after conversion they were called Marranos. Okay? So they had to convert or leave Spain without gold, without silver, or without any minted money. Of course, they could not take the land or die, usually burned at the stake if they did not, convert or did not leave. If they were caught, they would be killed, burned at the stake. This Alhamra decree, very disturbing decree, it was revoked in 1968 in the Second Vatican Council. It was revoked by the church. And so, thank goodness, finally in 1968, think about it. Okay, let's move further, see what we have. The Alhamra decree 1492. It was very anti-Jewish decree signed by the Catholic monarchs King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella. Right there is a copy, the original decree of 1492, that forced Jews into conversion, exile, tortured, and burned at the stake. Okay. Speaking of Alhamra decree, here you see Marano's Jews who secretly practiced Judaism. Because openly they were, Christians, they had converted to Christianity openly, but secretly still they were Jews, and some were really, they had converted to Christianity, but the church and other Catholics would not, believe them, and so they would come and spy on them, and if they caught them with something Jewish, they would definitely report them, and they would be heavily tortured, punished, and even burned at the stake. And that's where you see, a group of Marano Jews burned at the stake in Spain. And so this is, a very disturbing feature of the Catholic Spain. After the Catholics took Spain from Muslims, they drove the Muslims out, killed them, or forced them into conversions. There is a distinction between the Jewish conversion and the Muslim conversion. Those Muslims who were forced to convert to Christianity, they are called simply as Moriscos. And that's where the term Moor comes from. Most probably for the Spanish, the term came from Morocco, the word Morocco. And so Moors, Moroccans, and Muslims, these were all the same, terminologies that the Spanish Catholics or the Spanish Christian used at that time, and still it is used. Because the Spanish, they colonized Philippines in the 16th century, when they found Muslims in the southern island of Mindanao in Philippines, they started calling the Muslims as Moros. And that is why the Muslims in Philippines are called Moros. And that was the terminology that the Spanish conquerors of Philippines brought with them to Philippines. And of course, the country name Philippines comes out of the name of the Spanish king, King Philip. And so that's how we call the country Philippine, after the King Philip of Spain, who conquered and colonized the country. So Moros, Moroccans, and Muslims in Spain, that would be the same group of people. So they would be called Moriscos. Muslims upon conversion to Christianity would be called Moriscos. And the Jews who were forced into conversion to Christianity, they would be called sometimes as Maranos and sometimes as simply conversos. So conversos was a Jew who had been forced, into Christianity. Okay, let's see further. And so in that review, what we did was the Umayyad fall in Syria, but the rise of the Umayyad dynasty in Spain. The rulers, as we talked about, they used and abused religious rivalries. And most of the time, it was basically politics and economic interests that mattered the most, not so much the religion. And that's why Muslim would, have the blessing and support of Christians against Muslim enemies, and Christians would have the support and blessing and the active participation of Muslim soldiers against Muslim rulers. Okay? So that's why I say do not make it a fight between Christianity and Islam. It was either the Christian or the Muslim ruler who used and abused the religion against the other people. So people in Andalusian society, as I said, a unique type of society, the first of its kind, in fact, in the whole world that Muslim created in Spain. Very interfaith, intermarriages, never before like that, anywhere on planet Earth. It happened in Muslim Spain, interfaith marriages, very enlightened people. And when we talk about science and philosophy in some of the, down the road sessions, we will talk about that too. Okay. Muslim, Christian, and Jewish tolerance, a unique hallmark of the Andalusian society. And so that does not deny the fact that Christians did massacre Muslims and vice versa. Okay. Jews were also massacred, mostly by Christians. Okay. That is also a fact. And if you want to, read how much the Jewish people suffered in Spain, you can go to Jewish Virtual History online, and and also if you want to know what happened to Judaism in Muslim Spain, there you would notice that it was in Muslim Spain that Jews had the best of time in Europe. No question about that. So I would end this session at that, and let's see what's coming further. Well, there is coming reaction report at you. So write brief notes on any two aspects of the Muslim rule in Spain, Andalusia, stretching from 711 AD down to 1492. Stay engaged. If you have any question, any comments, you are most welcome. Just go to Laulima, the class site, and check your assignments and send me any message that you might have. Thank you very much, and we finished 21 on time. Aloha. See you next time with the 22nd.